Medical treatment was being stopped. McCain had been fighting an aggressive form of brain cancer for more than 1 year. Cindy and John McCain were married for 38 years. Senator John McCain would have been 82 this Wednesday. Again, breaking news this hour, Arizona Senator John McCain has died at the age of 81. Here's NBC's Kelly O'Donnell with more.
A spirited young aviator, the fierce campaigner.
We face many dangerous threats in this dangerous world, but I'm not afraid of them. I'm prepared for them.
An irascible statesman.
We never hide from history. We make history.
Through it all, John McCain carried himself as a joyful warrior.
I've enjoyed it, every single day of it, the good ones and the not so good ones. I've been inspired by the service of better patriots than me.
Patriotism rooted in family. His father and grandfather, both admirals, passed down his name and his Navy career. More than 50 years ago, on his 23rd mission over Vietnam, enemy fire downed his plane.
3 American planes were shot down and at least 2 of their pilots captured. One of them was Lieutenant Commander John McCain, 3rd.
A prisoner of war for almost 2,000 days, tortured and beaten.
Taken to the hospital where I almost died.
McCain refused early release to deny communist North Vietnam a propaganda victory. In 1973, a celebrated welcome home. Courage in war that forged his national identity.
I fell in love with my country when I was a prisoner in someone else's.
When McCain remarried in 1980, wife Cindy's home state of Arizona became his political base, elected to Congress and 6 terms in the U.S. Senate, where he became known as the Maverick. McCain often angered conservatives over issues like immigration, railed against Washington's penchant for pork barrel spending, and challenged his own party's president, George W. Bush, to change strategy in the Iraq War.
Early on, I came out and said this could be not only a long struggle, but a losing one unless we change the strategy.
McCain's presidential ambition boarded his Straight Talk Express twice. In 2000, winning the New Hampshire primary, but having to wait another 8 years to become the Republican candidate for president.
I fight to restore the pride and principles of our party.
Trailing Barack Obama, McCain rattled the race by propelling Sarah Palin under the ticket. But history had another plan. McCain returned to the Senate and remained a prominent voice.
Probably I'm proudest of being able to contribute to the security of this country and the men and women who serve it.
Are you okay? Can I get you anything?
His fame led to fun, cameos, and comedies.
Sorry, I hope everything's okay.
McCain loved to get a laugh. He often referred to himself as an imperfect public servant. Facing a dire diagnosis like brain cancer fired his independent streak, calling out a gridlock Senate.
We're getting nothing done, my friends. We're getting nothing done.
The fighter also turned reflective.
I celebrate what a guy who stood 5th from the bottom of his class at the Naval Academy has been able to do. I am so grateful. Every night when I go to sleep, I am just filled with gratitude.
With hard-earned scars and an enduring wit, John McCain made service to country the cause of his life. Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, Washington.
Again, the breaking news this hour, Senator John McCain dead at the age of 81, just into NBC News. Host of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, on the phone with us right now. And Chuck, as you may have heard earlier, Kelly O'Donnell reporting on this, a very certainly sad moment there in Arizona.
It is, Richard, but it's a sad moment here in Washington. It's a sad moment, I think, for a lot of Americans. You know, every generation of Senate has somebody that is referred to as a lion of the Senate. And this generation, this era, this last decade, that's been John McCain. And when somebody sort of gets that title when in Washington, it's because they're the type of person that is sort of a bedrock of the institution, that puts the institution above a political party. And John McCain, you know, he was partisan. He was a Republican, but when the chips were down, he would always defend the institutions above his party, and he would put it was his slogan for his presidential campaign, "Country First." It's something he always wanted to live up to. He himself would say he sometimes came up short, but he always strove to do that, and he always strove for a better politics. There was a phrase that Kelly also used in the remembrance of him about a joy that he brought. He epitomized the politics of joy. He did think the Democratic Party was his opposition, but not his enemy. And when you think about when we're losing him and where our politics are right now, since he's been battling this illness, there's been a huge vacuum in Washington. It's not clear who, if anyone, is going to fill this vacuum anytime soon. And I think there is this extra stomach punch that some people feel tonight, because there's this feeling that John McCain was one of the last people holding up a guardrail and trying with everything he had to hold up one of these political guardrails. So I think as we remember John McCain throughout the week, it'll be interesting to see other politicians, as they hear the stories of John McCain, how that will impact them going forward as we try to sort of heal this political moment that we're in, and I think a lot of people don't like.
Chuck, stand by. We also have Andrea Mitchell just joined the conversation as well. And Andrea, over the years that you've covered Washington, D.C., and certainly John McCain, Senator John McCain and his family, as Chuck was just reminding us, the very energy and force that he represents of doing good work, that will remain.
Absolutely, and as you were just saying, especially at this time in history, I'm recalling not just the campaigns, but his standing up on the torture report. And he went up against the CIA. He linked arms with Senator Dianne Feinstein, the leading Democrat, of course, to go up against the intelligence community because he believed so strongly to oppose George W. Bush and Dick Cheney on the whole subject of how the detainees were being treated. It was a very tough position for him to take, and he did that as heroically as everything else that he has done. So he would say himself that he had pluses and minuses, that he made mistakes along the way, but in covering him for all of these years in the Senate and in the House before that, he really showed that kind of determination and dedication, and he'd like to portray himself as a maverick. He wasn't always a maverick, but when he was grand.
And the way he was grand, Andrea, you'll remember in 2008, during the election, when he did something that really hadn't been seen in elections before, and during a town hall defended his opponent, and that was Barack Obama.
Exactly. That moment was so crystal clear. When he said to that woman, no, ma'am, you're wrong. He's a good citizen. He's a good father. He's a Christian. When she said, you know, he's an Arab. The fact that he stood up at a town hall meeting, took the microphone away from her, and defended his opponent, said, you know, I disagree with him on a lot of policies, but, you know, that is not the case. It's exactly what we don't see in our politics often enough, and certainly not, frankly, right now. And the tensions with this White House and John McCain have been well reported, but it's one of the sad facts. The backstory here is certainly very painful for him to end his career this way, but he certainly stood up with that final vote against the repeal of Obamacare and speaking out as strongly as he did against the president after the Helsinki summit, when he said it was one of the most disgraceful performances he had ever seen by an American president.
Grand is certainly the perfect word that you use there, Andrea. This, as we understand, so much outpouring from all different parts of the country, both sides of the aisle. saying, Cindy McCain, that it was overwhelming, the amount of support they've received so far within the last 24 hours. Andrea Mitchell, thank you so much. Chuck Todd, also thank you so much. We now, of course, when we think of John McCain, it was alluded to by Kelly O'Donnell's reporting, as well as Chuck Todd and Andrea Mitchell. And this is his service to the country. During the Vietnam War, John McCain was a prisoner of war, as many remember, for more than 5 years. And his captors tortured him and held him in solitary confinement. More now on his military service from NBC's Harry Smith.
He was John McCain III, the son and grandson of U.S. Navy admirals, but his war was Vietnam. In July 1967, the brash young fighter pilot narrowly escaped death on the deck of the USS Forrestal. A massive fire nearly sank the ship in the Gulf of Tonkin, claiming the lives of more than 100 men. Just 3 months later, while on his 23rd combat mission, McCain's plane was hit by enemy fire.
Yesterday, over Hanoi, 3 American planes were shot down and at least 2 of their pilots captured. One of them was Lieutenant Commander John McCain III, the son of the U.S. naval commander in Europe.
I was hit. I could see that the wing was gone. I ejected from my airplane. I was knocked unconscious by the ejection and injured. My arm's broken, my leg broken.
Dragged from a lake by an angry crowd, McCain was severely wounded and in shock. The Vietnamese denied him medical attention.
I was dumped in a dark cell and left to die.
Then they realized his potential propaganda value.
When they discovered my father was an admiral, they took me to a hospital. They couldn't set my bones properly, so they just slapped a cast on me.
Lieutenant Commander John McCain.
A French film crew was summoned to document the new POW's good treatment.
How old are you? 31.
But McCain refused to cooperate with his captors, even when he was offered the opportunity to go home.
Our code said we could only go home in the order of our capture, and there were men who had been shot down long before me.
It would cost him 2 years in solitary confinement.
It was very severe mistreatment, beatings, broke my arm. It was very serious, and at the time I wasn't in very good physical shape anyway, and it made it a lot worse.
In that time of deprivation and frequent beatings, he would once break during an interrogation, and he would attempt suicide. In all, John McCain would spend 5.5 years as a prisoner of war. Released in 1973, he finally returned home, forever shaped by his experience, but never bitter.
Senator McCain.
Years later, as a senator, working with 2 presidents, he played a key role in restoring relations with Vietnam.
It's very important for us to recognize that the war is over.
John McCain not only survived Vietnam, he made peace with the past.
I put the Vietnam War behind me a long time ago. I harbor no anger nor rancor. I'm a better man for my experience, and I'm grateful for having the opportunity of serving.
His heroes, he always said, were his fellow POWs, his fellow Americans.
I fell in love with my country when I was a prisoner in someone else's. I loved it because it was not just a place, but an idea, a cause worth fighting for. I was never the same again. I wasn't my own man anymore. I was my country's.
Harry Smith, NBC News, New York.
And again this evening, the breaking news, NBC News confirming the death of Senator John McCain at the age of 81. This has been an NBC News special report. We will return to our regular programming on the NBC network. Our live coverage continues on MSNBC.